the Business Savvy Singer. Hey there, and welcome to the Business Savvy Singer podcast. I'm Dr. Greta Pope, and I'm so glad that you're here. This podcast is dedicated to vocalists and to those who love them. We interview singers who are working professionally to get a glimpse into their lives and celebrate their personal journey to success. Join us weekly to learn how to move your career forward. Get tips and recommendations to help you realize the career of your dreams. You're listening to the Business Savvy Singer podcast, brought to you by theprivatemusicstudio.net, providing online education to build sustainable careers in music. Also, Eternal Wolf Music, producing audio for every need. And Greta Pope Entertainment, for the finest in entertainment. Hey there, and welcome to the Business Savvy Singer podcast. I am so excited today. I have a very special gentleman with me. Several years ago, I was invited to sing at an event where Billy and his current group, the Spaniels Forever, were also performing. We met that evening, and the rest is history. I invited Billy and his group to perform with me in a production that I wrote and produced entitled Motown Pride of the Motor City. We have traveled performing the show to full houses and rave reviews. During this time, Billy and I have become wonderful friends. I am one of his most ardent fans and admirers. Hi, Billy. How are you today?
Oh, fine, Greta. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be with you under any conditions, because we have a lot of fun together.
Yes, we do. For my listeners today, we are at my lake home. We have had lunch outdoors. It's a beautiful day. It is an 80-degree day in October. So we are really lucky. It's sunny, it's beautiful, and we're looking out over the lake. So my guest, Billy Shelton, is just a great guy. We are going to have fun chatting with him today. I might add that Billy is 86 years old. He has been in this business a very long time and has a lot of interesting things to tell us. So we're going to get started. I would like to know, when did you start singing, Billy?
Greta, I started singing when I was 3 years old.
Wow.
I loved music. Music just pulled me in.
Wow.
And I grew up in the church. My grandmother was a minister, my grandfather was a minister, and my father was a minister.
Wow.
So and church music, that's how it all started.
Okay.
That's where the music came from anyway.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Many people have had their start in the church.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. Now, where did you grow up?
Chicago.
In Chicago.
That's
I
spent my formative years in Chicago. And when I got to be about 13 years old, my father was a minister, a Methodist minister, and
okay.
they have I don't like the way they do, because they have the minister to go into a town and build a church, and then by the time you make friends and you're part of the community, they will send the minister to another place. So then he was immediately sent to Ohio, Akron, Ohio,
okay.
after that.
Well, if I may interject, I think that happens because your dad was successful at building that church. They could count upon him to build a church and then move him to another place and build another church.
Yes.
And so that speaks very highly of your dad.
It was good for him, but it was bad for me because we were poor, and every neighborhood we move in, I'd have to go through the gangs. I'd have to prove myself with the gangs, and they want to see what you're made out of. And then by the time you get established there, you go to another.
That's very funny. But I'm sure it taught you a lot of great skills in terms of being able to manage yourself.
Yes, running skills.
That is hilarious. but I'm sure you've really learned, I know that you have learned to really be cordial with people. People love you. People love you. And you know, those are all skills that you learn sometimes through situations that are not ideal.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, Greta, that the greatest gift that God can give anybody is a true friend.
Absolutely.
I believe in friendship, and all through my life, that's carried me through. Steve Harvey, he made a statement. He said, you know, as hard as it is, you can go through life after your father dies, your sisters and brothers, you can live life without sisters. And even if your mother leaves the earth, you can make it. He says, but if you don't have a friend,
Yep.
life is really going to be rough
That's
on
right.
you. And
That's
I,
right.
I agree with him on
I
that.
agree with him too. Yep, we are social beings and we need friends,
Yes.
people in our corner.
Yes.
So, how did you meet and begin singing with the original Spaniels group? And you might talk a little bit about who the Spaniels were. Some of our listeners are young. They may not know who the Spaniels were.
Well, in the year 1948, my dad, being successful where he was, they sent him to Gary, Indiana. So we moved to Gary, which to me it was the last of the boom towns, because at that time they had the largest steel
Oh,
mill
yeah.
in the world, and people migrated all over the United States to get to Gary. At one time, the population of Gary was pretty close to 200,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because of the steel mill. So here I went to Gary, and I enrolled in Roosevelt High School.
Okay.
All right. After enrolling in the school, they I was going around. I thought I could sing because in Chicago I used to have little groups and go around. And I believe Chicago. I grew up in the area where Sam Cooke, Lou Rawls, Bo Diddley,
Wow.
Nat King Cole,
Wow.
Minnie Riperton, Dinah Washington,
Wow.
around, Mahalia Jackson, around all of that.
And what part of Chicago was that?
The southeast part.
Southeast part.
It was right at Cottage Grove and like 41st
Wow.
Oakwood Boulevard.
Yes.
you
Uh-huh.
know,
Yeah.
And everything. And the name of my school was Oakland School, the elementary school. And they had Monumental Baptist Church, and they had, in my church, because I was Methodist, I went to the Methodist church down the street. And it was just such a lovely community. And that part of Chicago was the park districts. So there was vegetation, you know, a lot of
Yes.
parks and things.
Yes.
And I never will forget. That
Wow.
was really something to remember.
Yeah, and I'm sure very rich and vibrant culture.
Yes, it
Yeah,
was.
that's just fantastic.
So we would this was before air conditioning became popular in homes. It would be hot at 11, 10, 11. So we'd come out on the porches and sing to each other all night.
Wow.
Sam Cooke would be
Oh,
there.
my
and all of these kids, we were just a bunch
Wow.
of kids growing up.
Wow.
And Sam and I had a lot in common because his dad was a minister too, and everything. So it's just something I'll never forget. And getting back to Gary, when we moved to Gary, I met a guy named James Hudson, Pookie Hudson, 1948.
Okay.
And I was pretty astute at getting groups together. I thought I could sing, Greta, when I around that area, but when I got to Gary, I found out I couldn't sing at all because you had people coming in from Mississippi
Oh,
and
yeah, from
Louisiana,
all over, yeah.
over the United States,
Yeah.
and they would all meet up and have song battles and
Wow.
everything. So I liked Pookie. That's what his nickname was, James Hudson. He was later to become the voice, the lead singer of the Spaniel.
Billy arranges all of the vocals for the male groups that he sings with. I asked Billy how he became such a wonderful arranger. He told me that he learned from his mother, who was a church choir director.
And she knew that I had this gift. I was like a little tape recorder. If I heard something, I could mimic it, you know. So in those days, I could sing soprano because I was
you were a little boy.
a little boy. But my voice was always heavy, but I could sing. So in what the section that she needed support, maybe 3 of the sopranos didn't show up. So Billy, go over in the soprano section.
And sing
If
with
the
us.
altos didn't show up,
Yeah.
if the other, Billy,
Wow,
go to the
that's a
altos.
great experience.
Or the tenors sang, go to the tenors. And I hated that, but that made me
That's
what I
right.
am,
That's
you know.
right.
And I learned the rudiments of harmonies and things. I wouldn't know a note if it walked in the door, you know, but
But
it's,
you've got great ears.
yeah, my ears are good. So that's who I attribute my skill from, you
That's
know,
fantastic.
my mother. And I dreaded it for so long, but then again I said, well, I can do all this. I'll get some kids on the street and
Make
I
a
say, hey, you sing this part and you sing that part.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's amazing the kinds of things that we're exposed to as children that we have no idea how those things are going to figure into our lives
That's
later.
right. That's
yeah,
right.
it's really great. It's great. Okay, so I want you to tell us about your Hall of Fame inductions.
Well, I don't know what to say. I think it's being at the right place at the right time, you know. The Spaniels were inducted in the Smithsonian Hall of Fame.
Wow.
That was good. The Spaniels are in 4 different halls of fame.
Billy told me many fascinating things about his musical upbringing and some of the cool people that he knew as a child. Absolutely fantastic.
But I was more in the gospel thing. I would listen to all the gospel groups, groups like the Dixie Hummingbirds
Yeah.
and the Swan
Yeah, those
Silvertones,
male
the Soul
groups
Stirrers,
that were
the
singing maybe a
the Golden
cappella.
Gate.
And,
Right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And when I was a little boy, I could listen to the radio and mimic whoever was singing pretty close. And so when my dad moved to well, I got to tell you this, in Chicago, I was about maybe 6 or 7 years old, and I could do that. We lived up over a tavern, apartments in Chicago, right there on 47th Street, right around the corner from the Regal Theater.
Okay.
And, so the drunks, the alcoholics would hear me sing and say, wow, hey kid, come. So they would get a soapbox and stand me up on the soapbox and get their friends to come around and have an
Wow.
audience.
Oh
now.
my gosh, that's great.
And I could sing like, well, back in those days it was the Mills Brothers and
Yeah.
the Ink Spots
Yeah.
and Bing Crosby and the
Yeah.
Chariots.
Wow.
And I could sound
Like them.
yeah.
Wow.
And they would give me nickels and dimes and
Wow,
quarters.
so you were a professional working musician.
At 3 years, I was 3 years old when that
Wow.
happened.
I'm so happy to be able to share some of Billy's observations about life and the music business. He was born in 1934 and has seen many changes in the world. He shared with me that he has served in the military, and he spoke about the many changes that have occurred from his time in the Army as compared to today. Billy spoke about a particular incident during his time in the U.S. Army. He was stationed at Fort Lee, Virginia. Let's listen.
In Fort Lee, Virginia, that's the South. Well, I'm a Chicago boy, I didn't know anything about the
Yeah,
South.
yeah.
It started coming on me, Here I am. I've got my uniform on, and I get on the bus, St. Petersburg, to go to my fort, and the bus driver says, "You have to sit in the back of the bus."
Wow.
And I told the guy, I said, "What? You got to be joking,
Yeah.
You see this uniform I've got? This means that I'm willing to die for this country and you and this town,
Yeah.
and you're telling me I got to go to the back of the bus?"
Yeah.
He said, "Yeah." He said, "Because you'd be arrested if you don't."
Unbelievable. Arrested.
And I found out later that the great Jackie Robinson was actually court-martialed because he wouldn't go and sit he was a lieutenant in the
Wow.
Army. He wouldn't sit on the back. Tony Bennett lost a stripe because he wouldn't separate from his black friends that he was raised
Wow.
with in New York, and
Wow.
everything. Isn't that something?
It's really something.
Yeah.
Those were just really terrible times in our country's history.
Yes.
Terrible, terrible times. You're going overseas, you're risking life and limb to protect this country, and then you come back and aren't treated very well. And that was true for for all of the African American soldiers.
Right.
It was a terrible thing. So for our listeners, can you just sing just a little bit of the big hit song?
Oh, yes.
And what movies has the song been in? It's been featured
Not
in.
what movie, it's about 5 different movies.
Yeah.
3 Men and a Baby, American Graffiti, American Hot Wax Diner, and another movie that I can't think of, but at least 5
it's been
movies.
featured in a lot of things.
And all of the top stars have done it, from Tony Bennett to the Platters, the McGuire sisters. All the big groups have covered that song.
Yeah.
And the song, at one time, it became so popular, they said it was second only to Happy Birthday.
Wow.
And every time they'd end the show, they'd end it with
That's
Goodnight
great.
Sweetheart.
That's great. Well, I think, for our listeners, you guys have probably heard this song somewhere or another, but I'd like you to sing it. Maybe I'll sing with you. How's that?
Okay, all
We
right.
can just do the first phrase.
Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Good
night,
sweetheart. Well, it's time to
go. I hate to leave you, but I really must say, good night, sweetheart. Good night. The holidays are coming up, and it's time to start thinking about gifts for those special people in your life. Do you know an aspiring instrumentalist or singer? Take a moment to head on over to theprivatemusicstudio.net and check out the many offerings. There are options for folks of all ages and experience levels. Put a smile on someone's face with the gift of music. The Business Savvy Singer podcast is brought to you by theprivatemusicstudio.net, Eternal Wolf Music, and Greta Pope Entertainment. Let us know if you know of a singer who is having great success in the music business. We'd love to share their story and their journey on this podcast. Send your emails to info@gretapope.com. We've had a great time with you today. See you next time on the Business Savvy Singer podcast. The Business Savvy Singer.